Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Angels and Awakening podcast. I'm your host and author, Julie Jancius. Friends, today there's no intro, no outro, no ad. It's just you and I. I don't think I've ever told you this story. Sometimes when you've done over 700, almost I think 750 episodes now, it can be easy to be like, did I tell this story before? I don't think I have. So interestingly enough, and I'll tell you this story kind of coming up. I was in meditation a couple weeks ago and heard Spirit tell me to go on this trip. Well, I went over to Ireland, and while I was there, I was thinking a lot about my grandmother, my Grandma Harris, who was my dad's mom. And she was so Catholic, so religious, that the woman was in church twice a week, if not every single day, going, praying the rosary, lighting a candle, making a donation. And she had such an energy to her, such an aura to her of just complete faith, complete trust. Looking back, just following the breadcrumbs too of wherever God, universe, source was leading her, come from two sides of the family, both my mom and my dad's side, that were very much that way throughout the generations. And I grew up, my dad always, it was kind of funny story. He always thought he was Irish, more Irish. And one of the last conversations that I had with my dad was after he took like a 23andMe test and found out that, all his life he had this Irish pride. I think my grandma too. And then finding out that he was more French and English than Irish through the 23andMe test was kind of comical. But my grandma used to tell this story about feeling this calling to go on a spiritual retreat herself. I think it was to some sort of Catholic retreat for women. She went, and when she got there, she felt called to just kind of like explore the grounds. Sometimes when you go to a spiritual retreat, a spiritual place, I've done a lot of different things that are kind of held on holy, sacred ground. Did one where you have to like walk across these burning coals, fire walk, I think it's called. And it was on Indian ground that just felt so incredibly sacred and deep. And when you go and you walk on these grounds, a lot of times you just feel this very high vibrational frequency of oneness. You feel it's almost like the land itself embodies that frequency. Sedona is a good example, right? People talk about Sedona, Arizona, and just how it contains this very high vibrational frequency. You can go to places on earth that feel that way. So my grandma tells the story about going to this Catholic retreat, let's say. She's walking on the grounds and doesn't realize that she's gotten herself lost, one. And two, it comes to her attention, okay, I went out and now the sun is setting. And when you look up at the sky and the time of year and you go, I've got 20 minutes left, or I've got 15 minutes left, or I've got 30 minutes left before the sun is down, and it is very much dark here, and I'm not going to be able to find my way. I've been in that situation here and there throughout my life where you get yourself turned around or you get yourself lost. And I know that feeling within myself has felt like a panic, like, oh my God, I don't know where I am. I'm lost. I'm not going to be able to find my way home. God, help me. Help me. What do I do? So I can imagine, even though my grandma didn't say it, I can imagine that she had that kind of paralyzation within her of fear. Like, oh my gosh, I remember her saying it was a very cold kind of part of the year where if you're outside past dark and you're far off the property and they don't find you, you have the chance of freezing at night, right? Of just being outside. So I remember her stating that that was a fear of hers, that she knew she couldn't be out late. She wasn't dressed for it. She didn't know if she would survive the night. And she said she just paused and she said this prayer, God, universe, source. She would have just said, God, help me. I have no idea how to find my way back. I am off the trail. I don't know where I'm going. Please, God, help me find my way. And she said, as soon as she was done praying, she opened her eyes and there was this dog. And this dog was just looking at her like, come follow me. So she went and she followed the dog, and the dog led her back to the retreat center and led her back right within time so that she wasn't lost outside all night, that it was still somewhat light out by the time that she got back, wasn't completely dark. And she remembered going in and she talked about how she asked people about the dog who had saved her. And everybody was like, what dog are you talking about? There's no dog that belongs to the property. And she was just in shock and awe because this dog was so real. She saw it. It led her. She had no way of knowing which way to go back to the retreat center. She followed this dog and it led her to safety. And to find out that there is no dog on the property that belongs to the property that would have done that, no dog in the area that they knew of, she knew that that was her angel, right? Coming to save her. And my grandma, she just had so many stories like this. My dad has a similar story like this. And I read this one in the book here. It's called Guardian Angels, True Stories of Answered Prayers by Joan Wester Anderson. And I don't think I've read this one to you before, so I am reading this one today. It's called The Light of Love. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and Andrew Koval, an avid sportsman, decided to take advantage of the weather. I'm going hunting, he called to his wife. I'll be back at 5:30. Andrew knew his limits. Due to an old baseball injury, one of his knees was good for about 2 hours of walking before pain set in. In addition, darkness would fall at about 5 o'clock. And since it was already late in the day and his time was short. Andrew drove to his favorite hunting spot a few miles from his home in rural Cambridge, Ohio, just down the road from a farm where he bought hay every spring. He parked in a familiar hilly area near a field. He walked a while, flushed a few grouse out of their hiding places, but he never got close enough to try to shoot. And as he slowly realized his heart wasn't really in the sport today. My nephew, John Grimes, had died of cancer the past summer, Andrew explained. We had been very close, working and golfing, socializing together, but most of all, hunting grouse together. Is that right? Grouse, Grouse? Andrew had grieved deeply for the younger man, and now in this place where they'd spent so much time together, doubts crowded his mind. Was there really a God? If so, did Andrew believe in God? Was there a heaven? Was John there? Did life, another kind of life, go on after death? As a self-described lukewarm Catholic, Andrew still had little doubt. How could he know for sure? Andrew had been lost in thought for some time, but it was getting dark and his expedition was over for the day. He started back to the car. On the way, I flushed a grouse and decided to follow it to get off at least one shot. The bird flew in the opposite direction, but being in familiar territory, I wasn't concerned. As the sun began to set, Andrew lost sight of the bird. No problem, he told himself. The terrain was wooded, but he knew about where he was. If he walked back in a straight line, he ought to reach the car in about 15 minutes. And that was what he did, or he thought he did. But soon, Andrew realized he had passed the same marker twice. He was going in a circle. What to do? I was wearing a light hunting vest and it was getting colder, he said. My knee had started to hurt. I kept walking west, trying to reach an area that I thought or recognized. Surely he would hit a road soon and be able to flag down a vehicle. He walked and walked only to realize that he was again traveling in a circle. He thought again of his resourceful young nephew who would surely have found the way out of this maze. Cold and tired, his knee throbbing, Andrew knew his wife and son were going to be very worried. How long would it be before they alerted the sheriff? If he only had a cell phone, he should try to build a temporary shelter and wait to be found. Could he withstand the winter night with a vest and as his only warmth? There was another option, although he didn't think of it right away. He could pray. It had been a long time since Andrew had really talked to God. But if God were everywhere, even here in this lonely forest, he would surely hear. Andrew sat under a tree. God, he whispered, I don't know if you're listening, but if you are, I need help. More minutes passed and a plan came to him. Ooh, this is an intuition, right? We pray and then God brings through that plan through our intuition. Andrew would climb the highest hill, look for a light, and head straight for it. It was almost as if God were whispering in his ear, look for the light. Andrew didn't know if it was God's voice or not, but there was a hill high nearby. Gathering the last of his breath and strength, Andrew staggered to the top. At last, he ought to be able to see a lot of the countryside from here, but he could hardly believe it. There was no light visible from the high hill, not in any direction. No distant signal blinking from a house or a store, or not even car headlights moving in the black darkness. It hadn't been a heavenly message after all, he thought. Yet the feeling of comfort and guidance had been so real. Look for the light. He knew he had heard that voice. Andrew understood just then that the real light in his life ought to be God, no matter what happened to him now or in the future. His leg ached, and now his fear of freezing was strong. But he had felt the light just a little, and he wouldn't let it dim again. Slowly, Andrew turned away. He would go back down the hill and wait. Andrew gazed into the black darkness once more, his eyes narrowing. Was it a mirage? No, there in the distance, it was a light. Not in the same direction as his car, but Andrew had run out of choices. He would go towards it. Whoever owned it might have a phone or warmth or some way to help him. I must have walked another mile, but I was able to keep the light in view the whole time, despite the trees, Andrew says. Wow, if you know the woods, that is a miracle in and of itself, isn't it? He goes on to say, unexpectedly, he came upon the road where he had parked his car. It was sitting right there. Astonished, Andrew scrambled inside, turning on the engine and the heat full blast. Soon he was blissfully warm and content, as if this terrible experience had never happened. He should get home now to relieve his wife's fears. But oddly, he could still see the light streaming from a field about 300 or 400 yards down the road, near the farm he visited each spring. He was already so late, it wouldn't make much difference if he drove down to look and see exactly what had brought him safely out of his ordeal. So he decided to go take a look. There in the field was a 2-story house and every room brightly lit, with 2 floodlights on each corner. There were people working all around, both inside and out. Andrew remembered that this land was owned by a real estate agent and that it had a for sale sign 5 acres lot and was for sale in a 5-acre lot. He had no idea that a house had already been built here. I thought it was strange that I hadn't known, and also every room was blaring with this light so much activity. But he had his answer. He turned around in the house's driveway and went home. It was almost 9 o'clock by the time Andrew arrived, and his wife was worried and preparing to call the sheriff and arrange a search party. But he assured her he was none the worse for wear, and he told her about the house. I haven't heard about any construction over there, his wife mused, but wasn't it fortunate that you saw the lights? Andrew didn't grouse hunt for the rest of the season, but when spring arrived, he decided it was time to go visit the local farmer and buy his straw. Andrew turned onto the same country road where he had seen the house, and he began to look for it. Now he would see it was as big and beautiful and busy during the day as it had looked on that memorable night. Maybe he would even pull into the driveway, ring the doorbell, and tell the owners how their marvelous lights had probably saved Andrew's life. Andrew approached the lot where the house had been, but there was no building there or anywhere around it. The area looked just as it had last spring when Andrew had come to buy his straw, completely deserted. He was certainly looking at the same spot where he had been that night. He remembered the familiar markers, the hills beyond, and the driveway where he'd turned around. Had the people who built the house belatedly discovered that their well was inadequate? This happened before, and when it did, an owner would occasionally have his house moved to another lot. Andrew went past the lot and pulled into the farm driveway. The farmer's sister came out to greet him. After purchasing his straw, Andrew paused for a moment. "I was wondering what happened to that big new house down the road," he asked. The woman looked puzzled. "What house?" "The one with all the lights in the new subdivision. Did they move it because of a bad well?" "I don't know what you're talking about. The builder never sold any of those lots. There's never been a house there." "But," Andrew felt a shiver. The woman was looking at him as if he were a bit odd. He didn't say any more, but he knew what he had seen. Has that ever happened to anybody where you're like my grandma, "I know I saw that dog. That dog led me back to where I needed to be." Or, something happens where you're like, "I know that happened." And it doesn't make sense later on. That is our angels. That is how they work with us. Andrew has never found any evidence that a house was on that lot or anywhere around there. But he is as sure today as he was that night that it was there. "I have come to believe that God was responsible for it," he says, "because the whole experience completely resolved any doubts I may have had about God and about the continuance of life after death on earth. And perhaps his nephew was involved too. One never knows when one is willing to ask just what marvels the light will bring." Ooh, I like that last line. One never knows when one is willing to ask just what marvels God will bring in. That is something that's been coming up over and over and over again, is our willingness to ask. And when I went to this retreat this weekend, what was really fascinating is everybody in the group kind of got on this conversation of what happens when we pass away. And they were talking about near-death experiences and how people come back. And one woman said, "Well, yeah, but some people have a negative after-death experience and or near-death experience." And I've actually had on Dr. Eben Alexander to talk about that in the past, but this group brought up a really good point. And they said in almost every near-death experience story that you'll read, they said if the person had a negative experience, all they had to do was ask God for help. "God, universe, source, help me. I want to be out of this situation." And they were immediately thrust into heaven. Now, I need to explore that a little bit more because I've never studied that. I've never looked at it, just kind of repeating what I heard that day. But it does make a lot of sense to me. I do believe that our angels are always helping us, always supporting us, always guiding us, directing us, protecting us. But there is really something to what the angels talk about, which is our own perception and our own awareness. That if we're not aware that the angels are helping us, we don't feel their love and support. And if we're not asking the angels for help, we don't feel the strength of that. We don't pull in this extra divine God frequency to help us more and more and more in our lives. And so I talk to so many people, and I've had this experience in my own life at times where it can feel a little bit odd to ask God for help, to ask your angels for help. Maybe if you're not used to it, maybe if you're not familiar with it. But what I can tell you for certain is that the more and more and more that you ask God for support, you ask God for help, God comes rushing in with everything that it is that you need. And all you ever have to do is just ask. But how many of us in our own lives are struggling? We're lost in a different metaphorical type of way where we're not in the woods, but we're kind of in the woods of our own mind, right? We're trying to figure out the way forward in a relationship or with our career, with our children, or with a friendship or something that's going on. And we're just lost. We can't find our way. Well, God Universe Source says to remember that all you ever have to do is ask. Ask God for help, not just once, 50 times a day, 100 times a day. And God will be right there for you now and always. All right, friends, I'm leaving you with that. Ask for help. Ask. One more thing, I'm going to ask for your help. We are going, Elle and I, off in 2 weeks here. November 9th, we leave to go out to New York City for about 2 weeks. And we've got a lot coming up. We've got 2 Angel Reiki schools in person. We've got Angel Reiki School online that I'm running. And we also have a brand new membership year that's coming up. And now is a wonderful, wonderful time for you to join the membership. Every week we meet on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Central. What the angels have really been saying lately, because I actually prayed this year and I said, God, do you want me to continue running the membership? And I prayed over a couple of months about this, and every single time I did, I heard back the exact same thing. And that thing that I heard back is, Julie, what people need is a time and a space to dedicate to their own spirituality, because people are going so fast in life that they think that they're going to make time for themselves to sit down and read, or to be with their angels, or to learn and to grow in a spiritual way of how to develop their intuition, all of these different aspects about spirituality. They think that they're going to make time for it, but then they don't. And God said, what the membership truly is to God and to my angels and to your angels is this time and this space for you to have, to grow, to be with your angels, to connect with a new angel every week, to learn and go deeper into a new part of yourself every single week live together. And if that is all you joined the membership and did, just come in Wednesday nights, 7 p.m., be with me, be with your angels. You wouldn't believe how far you would grow and how far you would go. Over the last 5 years, as I've run the membership, we've always used the same content from the past. And this year, the angel said, we need to redo all of the content. I will still have the old stuff in there because I know people are curious and you want to go in and you want to see the old things. That's fine. It'll all be in there. But what I'm really feeling called to is to certify everybody as kind of an angel. I don't have the exact right words for it, but just that you are kind of an angel expert in ways that you've done your research to know who the angels are, how they operate. So I'm going to do that for everybody who comes through the program, is to give you a certificate. If you go through and you're an annual member where you pay for the year as an annual member, that'll be part of it. And that also gives you a discount. So if you pay monthly, you don't get that. But if you pay annually, you get that discount, financial discount as well. The other thing that I keep hearing is really bring people so in touch with their angels. So every week we'll be learning about a new angel, how they're working with you, how you can work with them, and new ways to unlock your own intuition, right? Like, how does your intuition work within you? And how can you be more sure of it know that it's really your intuition and not your egoic mind. Not doubt it. That's all part of this year too. I am working on getting all of the information up on the website, but it should be up by November 3rd. You should see that up there. And if you want to, check it out. It's over at theangelmedium.com. Go to the membership page, and on November 3rd, everything will be up and ready for you to view. And I'm so appreciative of you. If you feel called to be in the Angel membership, please reach out to me. If you have any questions at all, you can reach out at Julie at theangelmedium.com. That's Julie at angelmedium.com. Ask me any question that you have. But if you feel called to be in the membership, I want you in there this year so that you have time and a space for your own spirituality, so that you can grow with God, so that you can grow with your angels. And I think there's nothing better than that in life. All right, friends, you are not lost. Ask God what is right for you and believe and trust what you hear back. Feel the strength of the angels guiding you, leading you, directing you, protecting you. And if you need help with that, the angels just said, reach out, book a reading with me. I lowered the rates. 30-minute, 60-minute are now the same price as they were before COVID. That's over at theangelmedium.com. And then you go to the readings page. All right. Love you, friends. Thank you for being with me. Have a beautiful, beautiful, blessed day. Mwah.